how did people treat influenza back in 1918?
Well, back in 1918, there was no vaccine, so there was doctors would prescribe whiskey, or they might ask you to smoke a cigar.
Interesting. Well, an interesting story about prescribing alcohol. You know, the prohibition, as most people know, started in 1920. So if you're wondering how they were able to prescribe whiskey back then, it was a few distilleries actually got some licenses so they can continue to use alcohol for medicinal purposes. But that's fascinating that they're
yeah,
using
they
it
even
back
would
then.
ask you to gargle with some water and salt, or sometimes they would also cut the thoracic cavity or the chest to drain the pus and the blood and bleed you. So
I'd imagine not too many people survive that
no,
sort of
most of them were,
procedure.
You're right. Most of them died from those procedures.
Oh boy. So where exactly did the term influenza come from?
So it's interesting because the term influenza comes from an Italian word, says influenza, meaning to influence, influenza, to influence. And it was believed, the early Europeans believed that there was an influence of the planets and the moons in the stars in the epidemic of influenza. Later on in 1743, it was adopted into an English word. At this point, it was known as a bad influence. So it was believed that the epidemic of influenza and the symptoms were caused by heretics' influence.
Interesting. So if you weren't a believer in certain religions, then you caused
the epidemic.
influenza.